Most people remember Blind Melon for a single song, a girl in a bee costume twirling in a field while a catchy riff loops behind her. But that wasn't the band. Not really. After the breakout success of No Rain, Blind Melon was everywhere. But they were unraveling. Fame didn't just find them, it fractured them. And in the middle of that chaos, they recorded an album that was raw, fearless, and completely misunderstood. It was an album filled with stories of addiction, of loss, of madness, and of grief. This is the story of Soup, and the story of a band trying to outrun the weight of one hit song, even as it pulled them under. Hi, I'm Andy Fenstermaker, host of Poetic Wax, a weekly music history series and podcast where I dig into the record collection I've been building since the 1990s to explore the sometimes little known or little told history of a band, album, or song from within. Blind Melon's meteoric rise in 1993 came courtesy of a single song that, for better or worse, defined them in the eyes of the mainstream. No Rain, with its sunny acoustic strum and the now iconic B-Girl video, became a runaway success. It reached number 20 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was on heavy MTV rotation. But that whimsical video, coupled with the track's breezy tone, cast a long, dark shadow. What most people don't know is that No Rain almost didn't happen at all. Capitol Records had already dropped 3 videos, and the band had spent the prior year touring. But by slick maneuvering, the band was granted a 4th and final video from the album. No Rain seemed to be the one to stick in listeners' minds, so that was selected as the single, despite Change having been up there as well. The song itself was written largely by bassist Brad Smith, inspired by his then-girlfriend's struggle with depression. Its seemingly upbeat melody masked darker lyrical content about isolation and disconnection. That contrast, along with Hoon's unique voice, struck a nerve. But it was the B-Girl video that catapulted it into cultural immortality. The video was directed by Samuel Bayer, who also shot Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit, and it told the story of an outsider girl searching for her tribe. Her joyful discovery of other bee people at the end became a metaphor for belonging that resonated with the youth of the day. As Shannon Hoon later reflected, we were painted as these hippy-dippy, barefoot tree huggers. But that wasn't us. Not really. That's from Rolling Stone in 1995. The band felt increasingly misrepresented. Their self-titled debut, while melodic and occasionally trippy, had depth and grit that was overshadowed by the sunny optimism of No Rain. Internally, the band was already writing more complex material, and they were frustrated that their growing identity was being boxed in. Extended tours followed the song's breakout success, which kind of overlapped this period where they were about to go in the studio, but then not. They toured briefly with the Rolling Stones, both jumping at the opportunity while also feeling like they couldn't say no. As they hit the road, they didn't play No Rain at all, burned out on the song and its hype. It wasn't just public perception that shifted, it was the pressure. The music industry wanted more hits, more B-Girl magic. Capitol Records expected them to ride the same wave, but Blind Melon had other plans. Their next record would be darker, weirder, and unapologetically them. But first, they took a break, stepping away from music for months, not talking to each other, many members scattered across the United States. Soup was a reaction to fame and the expectations that came with it. By the time the band regrouped for their second record, they wanted to burn the B-Girl costume outright, figuratively speaking. They headed to New Orleans and holed up at Kingsway to record their follow-up with producer Andy Wallace, known for his work with Nirvana and Jeff Buckley, where the surrounding culture of decay and jazz and humidity seeped into the record. Bassist Brad Smith noted, "Kingsway is a beautiful place. It's an old turn-of-the-century mansion in the French Quarter." You get some of that with this record. The sound shifted. Gone were the folk-tinged flourishes of the debut. In their place came distorted guitars, swampy grooves, and lyrical themes that flirted with death and madness and disillusionment. This refined sound mirrored much of their surroundings. Drummer Glenn Graham later remarked, quote, "We wanted to make a record that sounded like where we were, and we were in a pretty weird place." Given their solitude from each other prior to meeting up in New Orleans, members had time to work songs on their own, so it was less collaborative up front. Others came together in a group, but it worked well. Despite that, recording was still plenty chaotic. Hoon's substance use was becoming more and more unpredictable, leading to increasingly erratic sessions. Yet the band channeled that volatility into Soup, crafting something far more visceral and intimate. Blind Melon worked up several of the songs without Shannon, having him add the lyrics later, due to his erratic behavior. Quote, "My first impression of Shannon was that he was off his rocker," which turned out to be dead on. It was fairly obvious that Shannon had issues, and they manifested themselves in the way of him living on the edge, as he did. As soon as you meet him, you can say, "Oh, you're that guy." That was producer Mike Napolitano from A Devil on One Shoulder by Greg Prato. Though they meshed well creatively, things were out of control. Much of the sunshine around their debut was gone. Soup was a deliberate break from that sound. It was obviously not a sequel. This was a reckoning. Before jumping into some of the songs on the album and its ultimate reception, I want to pause for a very quick moment. You can check out the transcript of this episode and more over on my Substack, as well as hear a few tracks mentioned in this episode. You can sign up for free at poeticwax.substack.com. Several tracks on Soup delve into deeply unsettling, emotionally charged territory. Taken together, they show a band tapping into stories that most 90s alternative acts wouldn't touch. Car Seat, God's Presence, was based on a news story about Susan Lee Smith, a mother who murdered her two sons by strapping them into car seats, then rolling her car into a lake. The track is harrowing and raw, told from one of the sons' perspectives. The lyrics of Car Seat are gut-wrenching. Tongue-tied, nerves as big as boulders. Why, Mom, I thought I was your soldier. My brother sits by me, buckled into the car seat. Feel the thirst, it's time for pulling over, into the truck stop on my daddy's shoulder. Out back where they plant all the trees, 10 feet away, my daddy buries me. It's literally one of the darkest tracks the band ever recorded. In a similar vein, Skinned is about the murderer Ed Gain. Then you have St. Andrew's Fall, which is a somber acoustic reflection on suicide. Named after the venue in Detroit, the song was reportedly inspired by an experience they had while on tour. Across the street from where they were, a crowd had gathered, looking up. As the band and others watched, a 26-year-old woman stepped off the 20-story building and fell to her death. Despite the horror unfolding, some onlookers had even encouraged her to jump. That experience left the band deeply shaken. As Hoon recalled, quote, "Nobody was able to say a thing for the next 3 hours." The song paints the scene with haunting simplicity, using repetition to evoke a sense of inevitable tragedy. About the experience, Hoon would note that it was one of those times where you don't want to look, but you kind of do anyway. Galaxy might sound upbeat at first listen, but it's a song about Shannon's deteriorating mental state and obsession. It was originally based on an instrumental called I'm a Freak by bassist Brad Smith, which was written during the Soup sessions. Shannon disliked the lyrics and rejected them outright. Feeling restless one night in New Orleans, he took a drive in his newly acquired 63 or 64 Ford Galaxy and returned with new lyrics that became the final version of the song. The car was Hoon's comfort zone. In the song, the Galaxy contrasts with the Cadillac that represents a safe, conventional life that he rejects. The chorus, I'm more at home in my Galaxy, feels like a confession. He belongs to chaos and anxiety more than mainstream normalcy. I'll be doing a deeper dive on that one soon, so don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, a quick shout out to my YouTube channel members. Thank you for your support. You can join today and get access to episodes early, when available, for just $2 a month. Mouthful of Cavities, featuring Jenna Krause, is one of the most emotionally bare performances on the album. Hoon's vocals waver between fragility and defiance. The duet creates an eerie, beautiful dissonance that underscores the emotional chaos he was living. These songs weren't written for radio. They were written for catharsis, for exorcism, and they forecasted a darker chapter that lay ahead. If one track encapsulates Hoon's internal war, it's 2x4. The song is about detoxing and rehab, about the mental anguish and physical pain of withdrawal. The lyrics weren't abstract, they were candid, needle, fetal. Someone's pouring warm gravy all over me. And you can see that synthetic therapy. Don't you know, it seems to be so unappealing, but oh, what a feeling. But Shannon Hoon's struggle with erratic behavior didn't begin with fame or drugs. Childhood friends and family described him as impulsive, restless, and drawn to extremes. As a kid growing up in Lafayette, Indiana, he was athletic, talented, and creative, but also confrontational and hard to contain. As his sister Anna recalled in the 2017 documentary All I Can Say, Shannon was, quote, the kind of person who couldn't sit still, not in his body and not in his mind. That restlessness stayed with him, surfacing throughout his teenage years and through his 20s right up until the end. He had frequent run-ins with law enforcement, getting arrested for erratic behavior, for fighting, and fighting again, and yet again, and even instigating confrontations with the police themselves. Drugs naturally ended up entering the equation, and by 1995, Hoon had been in and out of rehab multiple times. The band and their label, fearing for his life and the future of Blind Melon, hired a drug counselor to accompany them on tour, but even that wasn't enough. On October 21, 1995, just a few months after Soup's release, Shannon Hoon was found dead on the band's tour bus in New Orleans. The counselor had been let go after the first week. As the band conducted sound check, Hoon stayed behind on the bus. When the band's sound engineer Lyle Eves returned to wake him, he was gone. Still warm, they tried CPR, but it was too late. His death hit hard, not just for Blind Melon, but for fans who had started to see the cracks beneath the surface. In the wake of Kurt Cobain's suicide a year earlier, it felt like another chapter closing too soon. And it was. When Soup dropped in August of 1995, it confused both critics and fans. It wasn't Blind Melon 2. This wasn't a sequel. It was dark, uncomfortable, honest. Capitol Records had no idea how to market it. Radio stations didn't know what to do with tracks about infanticide or suicide or serial killers. The album peaked at number 28 on the Billboard 200 and quickly faded from the charts. But over the years, the story changed. Fans grew older and the themes of Soup aged with them. It became a cult classic, a record people returned to not for escapism, but for truth. Many now consider it one of the most underrated albums of the 1990s. So yeah, Soup wasn't meant to be a hit. It was meant to be a mirror held up to fame, to trauma, to a man unraveling in plain view. It asked questions that no one wanted answered on the radio. And for a while, no one knew what to do with. But time has a way of reshaping what we understand. To some, it's still a failed follow-up. But to the rest of us, it's a bold, bruised, and brutally honest album born from chaos and echoing long after the band fell silent. Shannon Hoon didn't live to see the legacy unfold. He never got to watch Soup find the audience it always was meant for. An audience that could sit with its sadness, wrestle with its honesty, and find beauty in the mess. But his voice is still here. These songs carry his fears and his fury and his wonder and his ache. They don't echo, they haunt in the most human way. They pull you in like a low, uneven hum of an old galaxy. Hoon's galaxy. They're not showroom polished, not built for the freeway, but they are something worn and personal. Something that rattles a bit when it starts, but still carries you somewhere honest, somewhere real. And maybe that's what Soup is. It's not perfect, it's not easy, but it's deeply, stubbornly alive. It keeps ticking. Misunderstood by many, but for those who get it, for those who truly listened, it's more than an album. It's a companion for the long, winding road. You know that road. It's the one you take when you tell the truth in a world that only once that next hit single